Greetings and welcome to Live at 5. I'm your host, Andre Turnbow, and it is a privilege to be invited back to discuss the matters of this present time. Last week, the Justice for the Next Generation crew held it down in Washington, D.C., covering the 57th anniversary of the March on Washington, which was originally led by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., where he gave his well-known speech of, "I Have a Dream." Today, I want to talk with some of my brothers about the state of the black man in America. Fellas, where are we in this dream? Has the dream become a reality, or are we living what feels like a nightmare? Just this week, some of the members from the Justice Crew took to the streets of Kenosha, Wisconsin, a city like many others that is in civil unrest, after a man by the name Jacob Blake was shot 7 times in the back while walking away from police officers. Footage of this incident was caught on camera by a neighbor and instantly went viral, sparking another wave of outrage across the nation. And we're going to share more of those details about our own time in Wisconsin. But first, we would like to acknowledge the presidential presence in Wisconsin. Both Trump and Biden visited Kenosha this week, turning the city of what is 100,000 into a backdrop for competing visions, not only about racism and crime in America, but the nature of presidential leadership in a time of crisis.
But when you come back in before they start to get comfortable.
That's why we're so honored to meet the pastors. I feel terribly for anybody that goes through that. As you know, it's under investigation. It's a big thing happening right now. I guess it's under local investigation. I know, Bill, you're also participating, but it's under your local investigation. I hope they come up with the right answer. It's a complicated subject, to be honest with you. But I feel terribly for anybody that has to go through it. I didn't get to speak to the mother. I hear she's a fine woman. I've heard that from the pastor. A really fine woman. But you can see when I spoke to the pastors, I see exactly what it is, and they understand where I am. And if we can help, we're going to help. But it is a question, it's under investigation. A lot of things happened with that, and other things, frankly, that we're looking at very, very closely. Yeah.
Police violence has been described by you, including Kristen, as just bad apples, a few bad apples, or people who choke occasionally. Some African American community leaders, and a lot of others actually, have said it's systemic. Where do you stand on that?
I don't believe that. I think the police do an incredible job, and I think you do have some bad apples. I think you'd agree every once in a while you'll see something. And you do have the other situation too, where they're under this tremendous pressure and they don't handle it well. They call it choking, and it happens. And no, but I don't believe that at all. I think I've met so many police. I have the endorsement of so many, maybe everybody, and frankly, I think they're incredible people. So I'm committed to helping Kenosha rebuild. We all are. We will provide $1 million to the Kenosha law enforcement so that you have some extra money to go out and do what you have to do. It was a rough week, to put it mildly, and you've done it incredibly well. I'm also providing nearly $4 million to support these small businesses that I talked about today that got burned down. And we're going to be providing over $42 million to support public safety statewide, including direct support for law enforcement and funding for additional prosecutors to punish criminals and resources to provide services to victims of crime. That was Bill Barr wanted that money put in. So that's $42 million that'll help with prosecutors and all of the other things that are so important to you. You need that, because when you grab them and then nothing happens and they're back on the street, that doesn't work out too well. With that, I'd like to introduce Bill Barr, Attorney General of the United States. Say a few words.
If you know, whenever there is an officer-involved shooting in our country, it's reviewed by local authorities to ensure that it was reasonable force. And when there are questions raised about it, the federal government also, the Justice Department, also reviews it. And like all procedures and processes in our country, we do it under due process. And we try to reach a dispassionate, reasoned decision based on an analysis of the situation. We do not allow judgments to be reached because of mob violence. We do not have mob violence in this country make our decisions over the fate of individuals when their actions are challenged. And when the shooting occurred here in Kenosha, the violence that erupted shortly after the shooting is simply not a legitimate response to a police shooting. And the looting and the arson were unacceptable. And as it progressed, it became more and more distant from the issue of racial justice. It was violence for violence sake. And once again, we saw the hijacking of a protest by a hardcore group of radicals who were carrying out, planning a coordinated, violent attack on law enforcement, on public property, and on private property. And that can't be tolerated.
Wow. That right there was outrageous. I mean, listening to current President Trump's comments about what's going on in Kenosha and just listening to how he may have been dancing around the situation as a whole a little bit, we're going to get into the meat of what we felt President Trump said. But as I say we, let me introduce my brothers who I have on set here today. I have a couple of my brothers here from the Citadel. Of course, we are young black men that are affected by everything that is going on in America. So, we want to definitely let our voices be heard today as we discuss some of these just grueling times that we're in. Sam, you watching Trump's comments to everything that's going on in Kenosha, what were your initial feelings after watching that?
Well, honestly, I was just a little upset that he didn't mention Jacob Blake. The whole reason why these riots started and these protests started is because he was shot in his back 7 times. But yet, he didn't even want to acknowledge that. He didn't even want to acknowledge why it all started, like why this is all happening. But yet, he just wants to fund the police more money. So it really just... It's crazy how he thinks, and I just don't understand, how he comes to Wisconsin with that mindset. And I know that angered the people, and it's just absurd to me.
Not only did he not mention Jacob Blake's name, but speaking to what he did for the police department, not only did he not mention what they did was wrong, he gave them more funds to continue to do the policing that they're already doing.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. Dex, you got comments on that a little bit?
Dre, I don't really have much to say other than it never ceases to amaze me, how much of his own false reality he lives in. It's literally every day you look on TV and he's just, he's outrageous. So sadly, his comments don't surprise me, and we got to do our part to get him out of there. Got you. The mic just got past you.
Yeah, I got something.
Okay, go ahead, jump on in there.
I mean, I don't understand how you could be the president of the United States, which is supposed to be the man of the people, but except you don't acknowledge the people. It's too many times where we see people who are in power who always want to throw money at people, throw money at at like what's going on, but never actually jump in the problem. And I think that's the reason why we hope we have to continue on holding these people like Trump and people who are of high office. We gotta hold them to a certain standard because we gotta tell them like, yo, we don't need your money, we need change. We don't need money, we need effort. because you just throwing millions of dollars is not going to bring Jacob Blake back straight. You know, like he's still going to be in a wheelchair, but we need change, not just your money.
Right. You know, Jacob Blake was one of the few brothers who has been a victim of police brutality that is alive to tell his story. But I think about the ones that we've heard thus far, even during this pandemic. George Floyd, whose death shook the nation. You know, Ahmaud Arbery was one of the first brothers that even started us on this J4TNG journey. You know what I'm saying? So I think what is unique to this story in Kenosha is the fact that Jacob Blake is still alive, and Trump could have an opportunity to affect his life directly, but he still didn't take advantage of that. As black men, how does that make you feel? Eric, you have a comment? Go ahead.
You know, one of the biggest things is go back, you know, to what I was saying a long time ago. It's all about your personal agenda and what you perceive as a personal agenda. You know, we all know what Trump is, or what he perceives to be in that camera, on that podium, and what he truly is to be. But at the same time, let's not forget the people that put him in office.
Okay.
The ones who put him in office, the people. See, we need to realize this. You know, it's always occurs to me how, you know, people care, but behind closed doors, you really see the unmasking of people and the true disguise of people. You know, and not even just Republicans, but just people in general. You know, he doesn't care because the people don't care, and that's always been an issue.
Now, when you say he doesn't care because the people don't care, can you unpack that a little bit more? Like, which people are you referring to?
I mean, just the people. Like I said, I wouldn't say race particularly, but I would say in general, as far as the people say, for example, it's all about your finances, or what he can do for you, or what he can't do for you. At the end of the day. You know, you got certain people who voted for him was to help out financially in certain situations. I mean, for example, you got people out there who are working tremendously for the Black Lives Matter movement, or working for their community. But at the same time, one of the biggest issues is you have the other side. You know, a working man, probably a doctor, a lawyer. You know, he's got a car note, mortgage, kids to take care of. He's not thinking for the near future. He's not thinking for that person. He's not thinking for the ones who stood out there. He's not thinking for the community. He's only thinking for himself. And which not to say he needs to do that, obviously provide for his family, for himself. But at the same time, little do we know that little change can affect everybody in the process. And sometimes we truly forget that as a country.
Gotcha. Okay, well, we've definitely seen what Trump had to say, but let's check out what Joe Biden had to say as he visited Kenosha this week. Check this out.
Hello, my name is Portia Bennett. I'm just going to be honest, Mr. Biden. I was told to go off this paper, but I can't. You need the truth, and I'm part of the truth. We are heavily angry. We came together to help get this community.
Right now, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties pulling that video up, but we're going to bring it to you in just a moment. Before we do, just taking it to Joe Biden as a whole, before we get to show you all this media and this footage, you know, you have seen a different narrative from Joe Biden as opposed to Trump, where, as you can see, President Trump is looking at things from an economical standpoint when it comes to addressing the social unrest that we faced. You tend to see a different side from presidential candidate Joe Biden, where he is trying to get somewhat of an understanding from the communities that are being affected by this police brutality and the social unrest that we see. Joe, would you like to comment on just what has been going on and maybe some of how you've seen Joe Biden's approach versus Trump's?
Yes, sir. So with Joe Biden, I just feel like he has his way, his methods, from the outside looking in, how he would want to, get everyone's viewpoint on who's been impacted, who's, been oppressed in these times that, are constantly being thrown at people like, ourselves and, other groups out there. And, just as you said with Donald Trump, he has his way of, like they say, birds of a feather flock together.
Right.
And you pretty much are able to see who he's working for and the guys under him and what team they're really on. And, they don't really connect with those of us who are in our situations because they're so much, higher up in the natural. They can't really, they're so far up in the mind and in everything else around them, they can't reach down far enough to catch us or grab us and connect with us. Whereas Joe Biden, given his position, he's at least making an effort, though he may not ever fully understand what exactly it is or where he needs to start. He's at least taking those few extra steps to get a better view around the corner than what Trump is able to see right now.
Gotcha. So you believe that Joe Biden is taking steps to, you could say, bridge the gap between the lack of understanding and the ignorance that comes between white America and black America as these things continue to happen.
Absolutely.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, for the fellas here, I have a question. Why do you think President Trump is not directly addressing Jacob Blake, let alone not even saying his name, to the fact of what happened to him, but as I said earlier, tiptoeing around the situation, especially when he's trying to get reelected come this November? That's tough.
Yeah, it is a tough question. I always kind of think with certain situations like this, it's kind of like they want us just to kind of forget it happened and that we could just move past it type. So I'm not sure why he necessarily wants to do it, seeing that, it is election year. Maybe it's just a part of some scheme that he's trying to have, but I just always find it interesting why, we let these situations, black men getting shot, it will grow, it'll be worldwide for a couple weeks, but then we'll just steadily let it die down. So I don't know if this is something where he's just kind of waiting it out just to see how we react to it. But it's a tough question. I really don't know why he's not really addressing the situation like it needs to be addressed.
Gotcha. Well, to flip it a little bit, how does that make you feel that Trump is not fully addressing it directly? As a black man, knowing that, Jacob Blake could be any one of us. It could be our brothers. It could be our cousins. It could be our fathers, and to have a president who sits in that seat, who is our commander in chief and who sits back when he should be in the trenches with the community who is hurting by this. How does that make you all feel?
To be honest, if I could just answer your first question and then go to your second one.
Sure.
To me, it boils down to your heart. Because he doesn't even acknowledge his name, and he doesn't really acknowledge a lot of the people who actually died between March and now. Because for him it's not really a big thing. Because he won the 2016 president election without even having the black vote, and so granted now this black vote is very huge. But you see, a lot of us right now are striving to make that effort to get him out by, going to the polls. And so, to be honest, it's just a heart issue with him. I don't think he cares. And in regards to how it makes me feel, it's sad, and it makes me feel how can I have a leader of a country that don't really care about not just my people, but those who are also less than me. Those who are homeless, those who are, trying to get to the country. Those who are trying to come to this country to find a college education, find a job. Right. He doesn't care about them. All he cares about his capital and those who he supports and those that support him.
Gotcha.
Yeah, just tag what he said. It shows he really doesn't care. One of the things I said that this COVID time has revealed is just people's true character, people's true intentions, and to me, it just shows how he really doesn't care. You know, maybe to him, you know, all these black men getting shot, he just saying, you know, to himself, oh, you know, people die every day. It's just a part of life. But people don't die every day to like police like this.
Right.
Like, this is not the way people should be dying, especially from police who are supposed to be protecting us. So it's disheartening to me, just to know like this is our main guy. This is the one who represents us as a nation, and you know, other countries are probably looking at us like, you know, this is your representation. You know, this is how people view the U.S. And you know, it's just kind of disheartening. And you know, I don't know what be going on, you know, through his mind, and how he wants us to be represented. Because you know, we're supposed to be a free country, and we're supposed to have our rights. But I don't know, man. It just doesn't feel free all the time. So,
can I say one thing?
Sure. Yeah.
When Congressman John Lewis died, you know, he had a statement, and you know, about one, he didn't even show up. Like, he didn't even go to his funeral, and it was kind of sad, because just like, yo, this is John Lewis, this is Congressman John Lewis, like one of the biggest, you know, black man who have made efforts in like civil rights, social justice, and it was just like, you know what, he had a statement that says like, you know what, John Lewis didn't come support me. Like, he about how like he didn't come to this, he didn't come to that, he didn't support me, he didn't support that. And so for me, that's kind of like petty. It's just like, you know what, because one man didn't support you, you are not even going to like acknowledge what he did for other people who are in this country. And it's just like, if I'm a president, like, I gotta put my pettiness aside and say, you know what, I gotta support the effort that this man did for the people who I'm trying to get the vote from.
Go ahead.
Not only that, we just fail to realize that through all this, you're giving the money to the source of the problem. I mean, just if you think about it, now I was looking deeper to that George Floyd killing. I don't know the young man's not the young man, but the officer's name, the one who had his knee on his neck of George Floyd. But I was looking at his background, Derek Chauvin. I was looking at his background, you know, some of the criminal records that he had: aggravated assault, sexual assault, misconduct, attempted murder. So you basically hired a psychopath / killer in my eyes. So when you look at that, when you're sourcing the problem like that, that goes to show you, okay, I want it to exceed even more without even having a solution. You're basically adding more fuel to the fire. So it just amazes me how much, you know, I pretty much knew his mind was not in the right place. But at the same time, I didn't know it would get this far where he would just go beyond his logical thinking and just cover himself from really what's going on. And that's just crazy to me.
Well said, Eric. Well said. Well, we're going to take a break from talking about Trump for just a moment, and we're going to look at what Joe Biden had to say as he visited Kenosha this week. So take a look at this video.
Hello, my name is Portia Bennett. I'm just going to be honest, Mr. Biden. I was told to go off this paper, but I can't. You need the truth, and I'm part of the truth. We are heavily angry. We came together to help get this community together as well, because we live here and we want it to stay the way we've always had it. But the changes that we want has to be more in effect. We hear so many people saying, oh, we're going to give you this, we're going to give you that, but we have yet to see action. And I was always raised to go off action and not words, because you'll be let down every single time. And the action we want are hold these officers accountable to the same crimes that we get held accountable to. If I was that officer, I would be under Kenosha County Jail right now. If I was these officers who commit these crimes, because if a medical examiner if a medical examiner does their job and says, oh, I'm ruling it homicide, that's murder. Why are they not being done the same exact way that me or my brothers and sisters out here in this world are being treated? Why are there more police officers in the black neighborhoods than in other neighborhoods? Why are we more targeted than anybody else? We walk somewhere, automatically you fit the description.
Well, we hope to get you that Joe Biden footage, definitely at some point. But right now, it just seems like it's not going to work. So I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to try to come back to it just a little bit later in our broadcast. But speaking to everything that has been happening in Kenosha, as we did speak earlier, some of the Justice for the Next Generation crew had the opportunity to travel up to Kenosha this week. But unfortunately, on their first day, rather their first hour within the city, our crew members were met with their own form of social unrest and social injustice. To my brothers Sam and Dexter, and of course Pastor in his absence, right as they entered the city, they were met with some issues due to a curfew. Sam, Dex, can y'all speak to that just a little bit?
Yeah. So we touched down in Chicago. Got a rental car. And then we started to get some deep dish pizza. In Chicago. Gotta stop and get in Chicago. We stopped in Chicago.
Did y'all bring me some?
Nah, we didn't.
That's crazy. Okay.
But from there, headed to Kenosha. Wasn't sure where our hotel was, but we just decided we're just gonna go straight to Kenosha. Got to Kenosha. It was quiet. Nobody really outside. First thing we saw was people getting arrested. Probably I'd say 15 cops around 3 people sitting down, and we was on our Monday Night Manna at the time, so the guys that was on there had the opportunity to see that.
Gotcha.
And then from there, we just kept moving along our way. One of the cops was just go ahead, hurry home. So we fine, cool. So we decided to type in our hotel in our GPS. So as soon as we put it in, Dexter was like, all right, it's 20 minutes away. It was like, okay, we about to leave, y'all.
So at this point, everything is still normal.
Yeah, everything's fine.
This to you all doesn't seem like anything out of the ordinary from any other city that you guys have visited on our Justice Tour.
I disagree.
You disagree?
Disagree? Okay, what's a little different for you?
Well, we arrived in Kenosha on Monday.
Yep.
Jacob Blake was gunned down on Thursday.
It probably would have been about 8 days prior.
It was 8 days prior.
Yeah.
So it was a ghost town.
Yeah.
When you arrived. Okay.
It was a ghost town.
Okay. In the other cities that we attended, it was always some form of life or some central location in which you could find people that were pushing the issues to the forefront. Kenosha was a military base from the time we arrived.
Wow.
The first thing we saw was, like Sam said, police cars and vests. And I've never seen the FBI in person before.
Wow.
But that's the first thing I saw was FBI vests. And
he was shot on the 23rd.
Oh, he was shot on the 23rd. Yeah. Oh, appreciate that.
Good memory.
So definitely different than any other city because in instances where we went to other places and police officers, because they knew what had happened in their city amongst their department, amongst their colleagues, were somewhat remorseful. These police officers were still trying to make a statement.
That's really
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? So definitely way different than any other city.
Gotcha. Okay. So you guys are at the point, you're in Kenosha, you have the GPS plugged in, you're riding to your hotel, and in the midst of that, what happened? Flashing lights.
So we pull over for a very brief second, and and as we pull over, Pastor kind of said we might get pulled over. I think some of the guys that were on the call may remember that. Right? We may get pulled over. We may get pulled over. And as soon as you said it, here comes a police officer, and it Routine. Asked for IDs. Asked us, did we have any warrants?
Well, I tell you,
And yeah,
before you go too much deeper, let's see what actually happened on that Monday Night Manna call. Do we have that video ready? All right, let's roll this video so you can see firsthand what happened to these brothers.
Fellas, we have just made it into the city